Hello, this is Denise Ackelson, and I'm from OSPI from School Counseling. And this is another webinar series that we're doing with Washington Student Achievement Council. You can find the schedule on the Washington Student Achievement Council Ready, Set, Grad, and also the recordings of all of these webinars. So we're excited today. We have some folks from Student Achievement Council here.
Hey, so this is Christina Winstead. I'm the Program Associate for Outreach at the Washington Student Achievement Council.
Good morning, my name is Yukiko Hayashi-Zagil, and I also am a Program Associate for Outreach at the Washington Student Achievement Council.
Let's go ahead and get started. So the Washington Student Achievement Council, if you haven't heard of us before, we're a state agency, and really what we do is we're a council made up of 9 members, including 5 citizen members, and 1 member appointed by the Superintendent for Public Instruction, as well as the community and technical colleges. And so we look at education really from preschool all the way through college and career. So we're really working to increase post-secondary opportunities and options, and then we will also talk today about the 12th year campaign that works on that with the counselors as well. So first we want to talk about, we did in Financial Aid 101, we talked about financial aid and the types of financial aid, but I just wanted to do a quick refresher that financial aid is really an umbrella. And so when a student's applying for financial aid, they may say, I just need to do a FAFSA or WASFA and I'm done. We want to make sure that students look at that umbrella and realize there's a lot of opportunities underneath that umbrella. And that includes things that go beyond the FAFSA or WASFA. So students will receive, typically from completing the FAFSA or WASFA, they'll be assessed for grants, which is income-based, and there are federal and state options for that. Grants, sometimes people call that the free money, but we really want to make sure we're steering away from that language because while yes, it is money that does not require repayment, it does require repayment if the student does not meet the guidelines of that funding. So if they drop all of their classes and some other things, and they're listed very clearly in the award, the rules they have to follow, but there could be a repayment status. We want to make sure students know that while they're receiving these funds, there are stipulations behind that. Also, in an application for financial aid through the FAFSA or WASFA, they will learn about loans, and those are income-based, and they're federal loans, and then they can also pursue private loans. But we encourage them to apply for those federal ones through the FAFSA or WASFA first. And then work study, which is a great opportunity for students to be able to earn income by working while they're going to college. Sometimes they work on campus, sometimes off campus, but it's a great way for them to not only earn money for school, but really gain some work skills and explore some opportunities maybe for employment for them. And then finally, we want all students to apply for scholarships. There can be merit scholarships, income-based scholarships, there are private sources, public sources, and nonprofit sources. Every student should be applying for scholarships. It's just a great way to pay for school, and we want to make sure that they're looking at those opportunities and that they're confident in those opportunities when they apply for them. So I get a lot of students that will tell me, I'm not going to apply for a scholarship because they're looking for a straight A student and I'm not going to get it, someone else will. And I'll look at the scholarship application and realize there's no guidelines for GPA. So the student may not realize they're not looking for all 4.0. They want to look at the story behind and the way the questions are answered in the application. So when you're working with students on scholarships, make sure that you're walking them through all the questions that are in there and that they're answering all those questions and they're answering the actual question itself. So and we encourage all students to apply for scholarships. I have seen scholarships go unawarded before, and I hate to see that. There's nothing worse than seeing money returned to someone who wanted a student to go to school when they know that students need those funds. So just real quick, another refresher is just that the financial aid process changed last year. The financial aid application opened up in October. That is the same for this upcoming year, and it sounds like for the continuing years. So we want to make sure that October 1st applications for financial aid are the norm, that you start applying in October and not January. So this upcoming year, students will be applying for the 18-19 FAFSA which sounds like it's so far away, but they will be attending college in 2018 and 2019. So we want to make sure they're completing that FAFSA, not the 17-18 FAFSA that can be confusing for students, but if they're graduating in the class of 2018, they won't be going to college until 2018-2019. And for this year, they'll be using their, upcoming year, they'll be using their 2016 taxes. So if you have students who are currently applying for financial aid and they're a senior right now and they'll be going to college next year, they want to use their 2015 taxes, and your juniors who will be seniors next year, they will be using their 2016 taxes. There's a lot of great resources out there in the community to help low-income families apply and file their taxes, so I encourage connecting them to those resources so that their taxes are complete and ready to go for October. This is just the website for the FAFSA, just in case haven't been there in a little bit, so it still looks the same. Up at the top you can see the reader bar. It has the home page, the FSA ID, which we'll talk about a little bit, and then of course that lovely help button. Now I wanted to give you guys an update about the IRS data retrieval tool within the FAFSA. So as you may have heard, the data retrieval tool is down right now. And what it is it's a tool that allows someone applying for the FAFSA to directly and electronically transfer their tax information from the IRS into the FAFSA. This tool has been around for a while, and it reduces the chances of someone being selected for verification. Now, those tax transcripts, it says, you know, a student might need a tax transcript. If they get selected for verification, which we'll talk about in a minute, they're going to need to get their tax transcripts typically, and it'll say what information they need to provide to the college. But if you have a student that's been selected for verification, you want to make sure that they're getting the documents to the college to ensure that their application is being processed for financial aid. And the easiest way to do that, it seems like right now, is to get a 4506T IRS application form for their tax transcript, and the link is on here. And we will have a webinar through Ready, Set, Grad next week that will be available that will talk about verification and how to assist your students in that process. So just a little overview of verification. It's what happens when a student or a parent they need to submit additional documents to verify the information on the FAFSA. So they just want to make sure that it's accurate information. It is not punitive. It just means that they've been selected, and it can be random that they're selected. I've been selected for verification before, and I thought for sure I had done something wrong, but that was not the case. I was just one of the random people that was selected, and I had to submit some extra documents. Typically, it's about the income that they are looking for verification, and that's why you need that IRS tax transcript. That electric, trying to apply for that tax transcript, they're finding that it's easier, while it seems counterintuitive, to do it via faxing in the form versus doing it online. And there'll be a webinar next week as well. That's a 10-minute mini webinar that I'm doing that will talk about the data retrieval tool and how to manually enter in your information. So just to clarify, while the data retrieval tool is down, you can still apply for the FAFSA. We want to make sure that students are still submitting their applications if they know that they're going to be needing those funds, but it may be a little bit longer of a process in order to enter in manually that financial information versus the data retrieval tool. And as soon as it is back up, I will let everybody know. I will shout it from the mountaintops. If you're working on the FAFSA and a student needs assistance, there's that lovely help bar right there. Just go ahead and click on it, and it'll connect you to someone who will be able to assist you with your additional questions. And then, of course, the WASFA has its own application separate, so we want students to apply for the FAFSA or the WASFA. They can't do both. They do one or the other, and so we want to make sure students are completing the FAFSA or the WASFA, and they're completing the correct one. If a student doesn't know if they should be completing the WASFA, they want to make sure they go through our site, ReadySetGrad/WASFA, to make sure that they are completing the right application. It'll ask them about 5 different questions, and then it'll route them to the application that they need to be completing. The WAFSA is right on our website, and it mirrors the FAFSA pretty accurately, so if you know how to do the FAFSA, the WAFSA is going to be pretty easy too, and that's for our dreamers and our undocumented students. If a student has DACA status, we want to make sure that they are completing the WAFSA, not the FAFSA. The WAFSA also has the electronic signature component, which is new this year, and it's really easy then for parents to sign the application just using their email. So we're going to talk a little bit about some tools that you can use in engaging your students about their FAFSA completion, and the first one is the FAFSA Completion Initiative. And what this is this is a tool that allows districts that have completed a district user agreement to access senior data and its student-specific data on whether they've completed the FAFSA, whether they've completed with errors, if they have not completed the FAFSA, or maybe they're missing their signatures. 93% of districts in Washington State have returned that data usage agreement. So it's most likely that your district has a district user, and we're happy to connect you to that data receiver so that you can get access to that account as well. If you don't have a signed data usage agreement, you're actually able to use that aggregate data, though, so you can make some informed decisions about how you're targeting your students. So this is what the portal looks like, and if you're using the College Bound portal, this probably looks a little familiar when it comes to the login component, and it will be in that same area that you're going to log in for both the CBS portal and for the FAFSA portal. And so this just shows currently our Washington State numbers. So right now Washington State has a 40.9 FAFSA completion rate that are successfully submitted. So that just shows us that we've been working really hard, but we have more to do to make sure that those students have opportunities in this state, especially with the end of the school year coming up so quickly. So right now 56.4% of seniors do not have a funding application in through the FAFSA, and so we want to make sure that those students are getting that information in as soon as possible, that it's not too late. You can still apply for financial aid, but they got to do it soon. When you're in the portal, if you're looking at student-specific information, it's going to have 4 main categories. It's going to have the first category is processed, and that means that the student's FAFSA was processed and there weren't any errors. It's ready to go. We've transmitted it off to the colleges. The next category is submitted, but missing only student or parent signatures. So this means that the student has submitted their application, but the parent did not use the information to sign their application. So if you sent in your signatures, I encourage students to make sure that it takes a little bit of time, takes longer to process that application if they do their signatures manually. So you want to make sure if students turned it in this week and they sent their signatures this week, it's probably not processed yet. But if it's a month later and they're showing as unprocessed or submitted with errors, we want to make sure that they're connecting back with FAFSA. Submitted has other errors means that there are issues with that application and that they need to go back into their FAFSA application and update it so that they're missing its other errors beyond a signature. It could be that there's a mismatch between the income. Sometimes students will put in that information about household size when they think it's their own family, so they sometimes will add extra people in there that they are not are not dependents of theirs. So you want to make sure the student just verifies that information. I know sometimes when they're going through it quickly, they can put some errors in there and they want to fix it. If a student doesn't know what error is in there and they're struggling with this, they can contact the colleges that they have listed in their FAFSA, because they will have that information and be able to tell them what the error is and help them with that. And then unmatched means the student has not submitted a FAFSA, or that there is a mismatch between the data we have and the FAFSA data. So the data from OSPI, that maybe their name is spelled differently or they've changed their name. And so we want to make sure in your portal you can actually connect students if you know that there is an actual match but it's not showing as listed. You have the ability to say that it actually is a match between the student in the FAFSA and the student in the OSPI records. And it actually will tell you, is it this student, and you can verify it. The other thing that I can see happening with unmatched students is a student will say, hey, you know what, I turned in my FAFSA, but it's not showing up, but I know I turned it in. And they've got their SAR sheet, and they're trying to show it to you and saying, oh, no, I did it. Look at the year of the FAFSA that they submitted. We had quite a few students this year who submitted a 16-17 FAFSA because they're in the class of 2017, but they really needed to submit the 17-18 FAFSA. So we want to make sure they're completing the right FAFSA year. If they completed the incorrect FAFSA year, they just need to go back in and submit the correct FAFSA year application. Just tell them it was a good practice round. So next we're going to talk about the cost of attendance. And so in the cost of attendance, and this is what's going to be on the award letter. So we have all the tools of engaging your students. With that data portal, the other piece that you can do is you can actually pull a list of all your students that have completed their FAFSA with errors, and that way you can maybe have a college night where you have someone come out and talk about fixing the errors. Or maybe you have a list of students who are unmatched and they haven't turned their FAFSAs in and they haven't submitted those, to be able to then use targeted interventions to address those populations. So when you're looking at college awards, one of the first things you're going to look at and helping students understand is the actual cost of attendance for college. So the total estimated cost is what the cost of attendance is. It's usually full-time, based upon full-time. Each school sets their own cost of attendance, their own COA. And it may include things beyond what you traditionally would see. It depends on what the school's discretion is, but it could be dependent care costs. Sometimes it's computers. Sometimes it's uniforms. If you're in a technical program, sometimes it's tools. There are two different types of costs. There are direct costs, is what people usually think of when they're looking at cost of attendance. So that's like the school tuition and fees, housing costs. And then there's the indirect costs, things that maybe students don't think about right away, but that's books, personal transportation, and things that are typically not paid to the school itself.
So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the cost of attendance variables that factor in for students. First and foremost, it's tuition and fees, whether or not a student is a full-time, part-time, or if they're just doing a full year, maybe 1 or 2 quarters for the year. The fees are generally listed separately on their billing statement. Then there's also housing and food. So students who are living on campus definitely have a different cost of attendance versus those who are living off campus. Books and supplies, and these can vary based upon the type of courses that the student is taking. Some students are required to have full textbooks if they're taking some of those science classes that require lab time. Some art supplies might be more expensive than others. And then there's other things like the personal cost, right? So which could be if a student has extracurricular activities that they're participating in, they might have some additional costs that are added into that. And then transportation, which is one thing we always want students to keep in mind, especially if students are living at home. If they have their own vehicle, getting to and from class is definitely more of a barrier or a more inclusive thought process for students to think about how they're going to pay for getting to and from school, whether they're using a bus pass or if they're taking their own vehicle. So when we use the cost of attendance to determine financial eligibility, we just want to give you a quick way to think about this. It's the cost of attendance and what that looks like for the student, and then expected family contribution, the EFC, which is something that we throw out quite frequently. So this is what we have with the student's FAFSA or their WASFA. It's the determined amount of money the family is ideally able to contribute to help pay for school. And so that helps determine the student's financial need. So after the cost of attendance and the expected family contribution are factored in, how much does a student really need in order to attend an institution? And so that's something that we look at when we have their financial aid award. To break down some of those costs, to give you an idea of the average cost of attendance in Washington State, so we've listed 3 separate options here to give you an idea of what students might expect to see in grand total for their attendance in the 15-16 year. So if a student's attending a 2-year community college pursuing an associate's degree, their tuition and fees could be about $4,200, housing and meals if they're living on or off campus, and all of that. Books and supplies, transportation, you're looking at a total sticker price of about $18,350. If you take that to a public 4-year institution, that shoots up a little bit and goes up to a total cost of about $24,500, and then a private institution. So just keeping in mind so students are not necessarily unaware of what they're looking at, but they can see that there's a variance. So when a student is applying for those 3 types of schools that Christina frequently mentions, which is the REACH, Target, and safety schools. So if you have a student who's trying to have a very broad scope of who they're applying to, they can see the difference between if they apply to their local community college versus their private college that they might be really excited about. So we just want students to be aware of what might come down the pike.
So we're going to look at some sample award letters here from a public 4-year and a private 4-year school, so you can kind of see what they look like. But I want to make sure you guys know that they come in a million different formats. There's no standardization, and that's why it can be a challenge for students and their families to really look at them and make an informed decision. Generally, it's not because they don't have the same standardized format. It can be challenging to compare from one school to another because there's so many variables in there, including cost of attendance and the awards themselves. So this first award letter here, so the student, woohoo, they got into Washington State University and they've got their award. In the award at the top here, you can see the cost of attendance. So it'll tell you this is the total cost of attendance for this school year. Then it's going to break down the type of awards and the amount. So the student assistance programs up here, you can see that the student got 2 federal grants. They got a Pell Grant as well as state need. They actually got 3 grants, which is exciting. They also have received on here, it looks like they're a college-bound scholarship recipient, so that's the amount they'd be receiving for college-bound. They've been awarded some work study, which is great, so that's a nice opportunity, as well as they have 2 loans on there. So what I encourage students to do is they want to make sure that if they don't know the different types of funding, sometimes it's easy just to highlight, okay, these are the money that you don't have to pay back. Unless you don't meet the requirements. This is the money that you would have to work for, and then this is the money you're going to have to pay back itself. Because your loan amounts are going to be pretty high, and I learned this in college, and I always told my students, take what you need, not what you want. This will probably be the first time in a lot of students' life where they're being offered a lot of money, and that can be super exciting because I know that when I got my award, I thought, oh my goodness, pizza every night, this is how we're doing it. And so when you take out that loan, the student needs to realize that they're going to have to pay that money back. They want to make sure they take what they need, but not what they want for like an Xbox or something. I had a student that came to me and said, oh, I got all this money and I'm going to go buy, this is back in the day, so like a PlayStation 2, and which is like obsolete at this point. But I encourage you, if a student comes to you and has that conversation with you, to help them calculate out the cost of the item that they're purchasing over the 10 years of payments they're going to have to make. So what is the final cost of that actual item? And I sat down with the student, and that $350 video game system, after the 10 years and the interest and all that stuff, is now like a $1,200 investment. That's obsolete at this point. That student is still paying on it, and it is something that you find at Goodwill. So we want to make sure they're making smart choices with this money. This is money for school. We want it to be a wonderful 4 years, but not the best 4 years of their life financially that they have to pay for the next 10. So take what they need, but not what they want. It's okay to decline part of your loan award. At the bottom, you'll have the contact information for the school that they are receiving the funds from, as well as their financial aid office. This is based upon a student who's going to a public 4-year school who has a 0 EFC. The next award here is going to be for a student who is receiving an award for a private 4-year school who also has the same EFC. So as you can see, the difference between the award letters is pretty huge here. They look completely different. So you can see at the top, they have listed the direct costs, and they've also listed the cost of attendance. So they've actually broken it down and given you the direct costs into 3 different categories. So you can see that they have tuition and fees for a full-time student. They have housing and meals for on-campus. And that last one is their wellness plan. That's typically their access to the medical center. And so some of those direct costs, of course, they're non-negotiables. They have to pay for those. Then you're going to see the types of awards. So this is the types of aid and the amounts. So you can see in the next section, it's grants and scholarships. And so this is great because it breaks down into they've received a scholarship from the institution itself versus through their FAFSA. So they've received an institutional scholarship, as well as some state need grant, a Pell Grant through the federal government. This is also a college-bound student, so we can see how that application they did in middle school is now they're reaping the benefits of it in their award letter, which is what we love to see. And then they have a state need grant. So you can see the total amount of the awards they've received. So now you can see the net cost in the next section, and then this is how they are covering those additional costs through loans. So you can see the types of loans that they've been offered, and you can see how much they're receiving, how it breaks down into the quarters, and then the total net cost to the student due to PLU, then you can see is $242 after those loans have been taken out. And then, of course, again, you're always going to find the contact information for that school on there. When you're doing award letter analysis, it's great to connect students to the universities they're going to be attending, because those are the financial aid officers that they're going to be asking for help in October when they reapply for the FAFSA, because they're doing this every single year. And that way they have a good connection with someone who can assist them in that process while they're going to college.
So just to give you an idea, what we did is we took the the compilation of the last 3 slides that we've been talking about to give you an idea of how a student can compare their different types of award letters from different institutions. So at the top we have that bracket where we talked about how much a student would need with their cost of attendance, tuition and fees, and all of that, and then looking at how this would break down at different types of institutions. So in the middle here in the tan, you're going to see where a student at a 2-year community college, what their cost of attendance and their total gift aid would look like, compare that to a 4-year public with a bachelor's degree or a 4-year private. And you can see how a student can incorporate their federal Pell Grant, their state need grant, and then you'll see here the college-bound scholarship, how that factors in. So if you're looking at a 2-year community college, the student has the college-bound scholarship listed in there for $749 at the 2-year institution, $994 at the 4-year public, and then it goes to about $3,387 for the private institution. And that's because when a student has college-bound scholarship, it's income and need-based, and then it works together with a student state need grant, which is the other very big state financial aid program that we facilitate. And so I think it's important to recognize that not every student's financial aid award is going to be the same, and not every student's college-bound award is going to be the same. There are a lot of different moving factors, and I would also encourage you to know that the college-bound scholarship does not appear the same on every single financial aid award letter. Sometimes it's grouped in with state need grant. Sometimes it's not listed because the student has so many different options listed on their financial aid award letter. So I would encourage any student who has applied for the college-bound scholarship, who has received all of that information and correspondence from us, that if they have questions and they say, I know I have the college-bound scholarship but I don't see it, contact their financial aid office. That's why we have their information on there. That's why that's on their financial aid award letters. So that way if they have any questions about what's missing or what is there so they can better understand it, they know what they do have and what they don't have. What's also important here is that you can see how the students here, for both the 2-year and the 4-year public institutions, for their federal loans, they have a subsidized loan of $3,500 at all 3 institutions, but an unsubsidized loan is available at the private institution. So just keeping in mind that every award letter is different, so this is where you can do that sort of cost-benefit analysis in terms of figuring out which school is going to have the most benefits for the students financially, and then kind of weighing all the factors in outside of location, outside of the programs that they're offering, just to give them a better wraparound idea of what their costs and what their school life is going to be like.
So you don't have to create that spreadsheet. We actually have a tool that we use through Big Future that you can enter in those categories into the tool, and it will give you that cost analysis. And so you can sit down with your students and you can have them enter in. And also I think having the student enter in this information helps them understand how the funds break down. And so they can compare their own awards through this to see what their final cost of attendance is, to see what the loan amounts are, so they can make an informed decision on themselves on if they want to accept that award package or if they want to attend that school. We really encourage students. We want them to make not just, they've done all these choices to apply to these schools based upon what's the best fit for them as an individual. This is another chance for them to really look at it and assess and make sure this is the right fit for them as an individual. So one thing that we want to make sure is that students are looking to see if they can actually afford that institution. So there might be schools that the student can't afford, and they want to assess that, before they make a commitment. And so we want them to look at the total out-of-pocket cost to make sure that they can afford not just the first year at that college, but they can afford all 4 years at that institution or both years at that institution, depending on their program. The average Washingtonian actually borrows about $25,000 in loans for undergraduate education. So we want to see, is there part of that award, that out-of-pocket cost, that they can get from work study, or maybe they work while they're going to school. This is really where we're encouraging students, to apply for scholarships. Can scholarships cover that gap? And then making sure that you continue to apply for scholarships after you get admitted. So you're going to be applying for financial aid every single year, and you want to make sure that students are applying for those scholarships every single year as well. They also want to check and see any of those scholarships they're receiving in their award to see if they are renewable scholarships or if they're a freshman-only scholarship, just to see the reasonable expectations of what they'll be paying every single year. So if a student has questions about their financial aid award, connect them to their financial aid officers at the college. And so this is extremely true when the student has financial circumstances that have changed since they completed the FAFSA or WASFA. So let's say a parent loses their job. We want to make sure that, and their income has changed. So if they were making, $75,000 a year in 2015 and they submitted those taxes, but unfortunately their parent was laid off last year and now the family is only making $35,000. That's a huge change on their EFC. We want to make sure they contact the college to let them know that there has been a change of circumstance and they can ask for a professional judgment. If the award offer is not affordable, it doesn't hurt to ask the financial aid office and tell them, I can't afford this. Is there any additional funds? Worst case scenario, they're going to say no, but if you do not contact them and ask them, you've already told yourself no. So you want to make sure you're advocating for yourself. And sometimes it can be hard to contact those financial aid offices on the phone. Sometimes there's a little bit of a wait time, and that can be a challenge for students, but encourage them to be persistent and to be patient. If they can connect with those financial aid offices in person, that connects them to the people who will be helping them as they continue on in college as well. So it's a great time to grow those relationships.
So what's important for students to remember is that they have to apply for financial aid every single year. It's not just that first year before they start attending college that they need to continue. It's a continuing process for as long as they're attending. And so we want to remind them to submit the FAFSA or WASFA, whichever they're applying for, in October of every single year. This is the timeline from now until they tell us it's going to change, but I'm going to say that it's going to be October for quite some time. And it's going to open in the beginning of October. So both students who are applying for either of those applications should be able to start that process in the fall, which I think is great because students are starting their application process for admissions and doing financial aid at the same time, so their brains start functioning in that forward-moving process.
And one thing you can do to help facilitate them continuing to apply for financial aid beyond their senior year of high school is invite them back to your FAFSA nights. They want to come back and tell you all the cool things they're doing in college, and sometimes they might even be willing to talk to your students about some peer-to-peer talk about college and what it looks like, their freshman year. So we encourage you, send them an invitation, especially if they're still in the area, to come to your FAFSA night to be able to apply for financial aid for their sophomore year of college.
Absolutely. And I think the other part we want to talk about is that if a student, when it comes to work study, what's really important is that students are given the option to opt in to work study. And I always say opt in, and you can decline work study, but you don't get it if you don't say yes. So if a student didn't have work study indicated on their first year applying for the FAFSA or WASFA, have them do it again because they might have better skills to help them manage work-school life balance, and they might be able to have an opportunity to earn a little bit of an income incorporated into their financial aid. Another really important thing is get to know the financial aid office, get to know the staff, get to know the people who are experts in this area because they can help answer any questions and help demystify this process. Financial aid can seem scary because it seems so technical, and there are people there on campus who are advocating for these students and their families and want to make it easier and more understandable because in the end it makes everybody's lives easier once we know more and are more informed about the process. Another thing is to have students continue to apply for scholarship programs. For some students who apply for admission, they're automatically reviewed for scholarships with their admission package, and so they get scholarships awarded, but they don't think about the fact that they might have to reapply for other institutional scholarships, or there might be other scholarships that they're not eligible for as a continuing student. So I always think about applying for scholarships as a part-time job. Students are dedicating themselves to applying for scholarships as frequently. It could be 5 to 10 hours a week where they're looking up new opportunities, some based on their activities. Maybe their interests have changed from when they were in high school to now that they're in college. There might be other things that are better suited or more appropriate for what they're interested in studying. And you don't know until you start looking, and there are a lot of people who are on college campuses who are there to help and continue advocating for those students. So just as I said before, consider financial aid as a part-time job. The more informed students are about this and the more they continue to learn about this process, the better it will be and the easier it will be for them to continue and move on.
Okay, so how can Washington Student Achievement Council help you as you're working with your students? And so we're going to talk a little bit about the 12th Year Campaign. And so the 12th Year Campaign will provide training. So we actually have a training on the FAFSA and WASFA every every fall. And it may sound a little boring, but it's a line by line of both. You get to go through the whole application so you can see what the entire thing looks like. It's a recorded webinar, so you don't even have to watch it at 8 in the morning when I do it. You can watch it that evening with a bowl of popcorn and learn all about the FAFSA and the WASFA, but it'll walk you through the entire thing so that you can work with your students on it. We have training materials as well as we have additional webinars that we co-present on too. So we have a lot of different opportunities for you to get the information you need to assist your students. The 12th year campaign will also provide printed materials to sites, including postcards in 5 different languages, telling students you can't get financial aid if you don't apply. And it tells them what they need to bring with them to a financial aid event at your school, and all you have to do is write the date of your event and where it's located right on the back of the postcard. Just give them out to them as they go home. We also have electronic resources. We have a student workbook where you can work through with your students about selecting a college, how to apply for financial aid, and then, of course, the actual application process. And then, of course, you have a contact, so we'll be able to help you facilitate conversations between you and the colleges if you'd like to have someone come out to your event. And we have trainings on how to run those events as well. So the 12th year campaign is a combination of the college application campaign, College Goal Washington, and the FAFSA completion initiative, which we talked about earlier. So it's really to help students with the college application process, the financial aid application process, and then providing you data so that you can serve those students in intentional ways to make sure that they are completing those tasks. You can apply now to be a 12th year site, so what that means is you can actually get support at those events with materials, and if you're struggling to find volunteers as well as FAFSA experts, we can help connect you to people that might be willing to work at your event. You can sign up now. We've opened up our application because we know you guys are working on your 2017-18 plans right now. So counselors in our needs assessment last year said open it up earlier so that when we're making our plans about what we're going to be doing next year, that we can include this into our action plan. You can sign up at www.bit.do/12-year. It's a 3-minute application on a SurveyMonkey. It's just to let us know that you would like to be a site, and that way when we're building more materials, we can connect with you to do some needs assessments. If you are currently running events at your school to address the lower FAFSA completion rates in the state, I am happy to provide materials to help support you this year. We can retroactively enroll you into the program and send out materials to help support you in your efforts. And there's a multiple amount of ways to apply to the program to be able to apply it to your school, but also how to utilize it. If you need any specifically washboard materials, if you need washboard brochures, I'm happy to send them out. I know scholarships are big on everyone's to-do list right now, and we have these lovely 8.5 by 11 two-fold scholarship brochures that we can send out to your school, and you just have to email me. And my email is right here at the top. It's Christina Winstead, so christinaw@wsac.wa.gov.
And then, of course, if you have any questions, especially regarding the College Bound Scholarship, how it looks, how it works, feel free to contact me. My email is probably not as easy to remember, but it's my first name, Yokiko, Y-O-K-I-K-O-H, as in Hayashi, at wasac.wa.gov.
And this webinar will be available online probably in the next week. So if you only came in halfway through, or maybe you want to show this to all your coworkers, you can go ahead and access it right online, and it's going to be at Ready, Set, Grad?
/web
webinars. That's a tongue twister.
Yeah. And we would be happy to send out the PowerPoint presentation to any of our attendees as well. So Danius will be emailing that out. But feel free now to facilitate questions through our chat box, and we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll start answering those questions. Do we have to do anything to have them record it? So we're still recording. Oh, I'm going to be Okay, so we're going to start answering some questions that we have here. What's the question? So, huh? Oh, okay, so let's see here. The results from the CBS survey taken in February is one of the questions. So, do we have any results available from the CBS survey taken in February?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
We're working on it.
Next question. Came late to the webinar. Of course, we'll make sure you have a recorded copy of it. If you came in late, you can get the first part of it, no problem. How can I get the PowerPoint? Oh, just contact.
I'll mail it to the list.
Oh, it's going to go out to the list of people, so you're fine there. Other than that, let's see. Any others? I think that's it for right now. Oh, wait, hold on. Is the EFC info available to me through the FAFSA completion portal? I need EFC for local scholarship opportunities. Okay, so the EFC is not available through the FAFSA completion portal. It's not some of the data set that we have, but the EFC will be on the students' SAR, their student aid report, so you can have the student, and I encourage students to always be reviewing their SAR when they get it, because that's where they can see some of their errors. And so you want to make sure that the students bring their SAR with them to a scholarship night so that they have that EFC to put into their scholarship applications. I know that can be a challenge, but it's one of those great ways for them to know on there for next year, because they're going to have to do the same applications next year for scholarships. It's good for them to know where to find that for the following year. Any other questions? If anyone else has questions, go ahead and type them. I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds to type it in. I don't see any more. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're so excited that you're learning about this and you're going to be helping your students as they do those analysis of the award letters. If you have questions, let us know. And we will see you guys next month for our next webinar. And the next one is on?
That's going to be on summer melts, and that's going to be with Beth Kelly from Washington State Gear Up. And Denny's.
And Denny's. So a great topic to be able to address in a great, nice, timely manner. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.